that review was successful. We actually got a commendation for being embedded in the community and being a good community partner. And I think the results of that can be shown in myriad ways, but one of them I think is just joining together this evening to discuss issues and all the services that we actually provide. We gave you all a kind of two-pager here on this economic study that we recently had completed for Eastern Oregon University. And I think what it lays out to you is how critical we are to this community and its economic well-being. As you can see here, we're investing $9 million annually in capital projects that directly result in local work, local contractors, construction workers, suppliers, professional services, and over $45 million just between 2021 and 2025. So in addition to commencement, there are these long-term investments in our community that we see over and over again, year over year. I also wanted to share some of that larger economic impact outside of our capital improvements, which you can see right next to that first box on the right. We're one of the largest employers in the community, and that means that we're generating about a $76 million economic impact just within Union County, supporting 830 jobs that are, again, keeping this community lively and supported. Again, as I mentioned commencement at the beginner, we have nearly 20,000 visitors come to this community every year. And again, they may get a flat tire there. They may have other issues. They may need a pair of glasses. And all of this is going to result in business for the community. You can see some of our top majors there. So we're also supporting the community in the development of jobs. And then if you turn the page, I would also point out to you one of the things that really impressed our accreditors is our support for youth and education in Union County and in fact in all of Eastern Oregon through projects like Go STEM, which make actual science materials available to small communities and larger communities. Our reading clinic is helping support the literacy rates of youth, which, as we know in this state, have been declining dreadfully. And so we're really embracing teacher education as well as student tutoring in new and meaningful ways. There's listed here the FLBA, FFA, STEM, but also athletics isn't even listed on this. The number of visitors we just bring to this community through athletics, and to be clear, we are dominating. We are number one in the Cascades Collegiate Conference for all sports right now. And as a result of that, we were able to host more schools coming to this community to use our services and compete. When we're not number one, they go to other universities and the games are hosted there. So we're really playing a vital role in bringing folks to community and helping to lift this community up. Now into the deep end, John. Our board has just approved additional capital project spending. This spending will come from what we call auxiliaries. So it doesn't come from dollars, for example, student tuition. It'll come from auxiliary and sports lottery dollars that come to the university via the state. And we have a pretty tight budget. And as a result, we are creating a pretty pared down ball field complex. So right now, our men's volleyball does not play on campus, and this poses real issues in terms of our ability to host games, to bring other students into the community. It also poses an issue in terms of travel costs for the university. It's hard to attract students when you share a space with others, so having a facility of our own will help us attract better baseball, well not better, but more holistic baseball athletes. And I'm not sure how much each of you keeps up with EOU sports, but softball has been a national player for several years now, and so we're also upgrading that facility. As John has mentioned, him and Director Weisenflu, our athletic director, have begun talking about some of the issues that this project raises. There is a water main that runs through
sort of the eye of the softball field, and then right alongside the outside of where the baseball field will be located. This is a critical, critical line for LeGrand residents, and you know, we are looking to have a partnership and a collaboration with the city. We have to do a lot of infrastructure work in that field to ready it for the ballpark. So for example, our EOU softball team, one of the only major games that they lost this year is when they were forced to move from our softball facility to LeGrand's. And while I don't blame LeGrand's facility for it, there were, you know, that's kind of upsetting to the team, right? They're used to playing on this field, and I think it created some issues in their flow. And so we need to do infrastructure work to make sure there's no flooding there. But the excavation does go below the existing water main line. And so this is going to cause issues in the longer term, particularly once we have the turf up. If you have issues with your water line through those facilities, you're not going to want to have to go through our softball and baseball fields. That's going to be a considerable expense. And so we had hoped to have a conversation with John and others about collaborating on this to reduce costs so that we can successfully get this field up and running for play. And that was what I was going to share on that, John, if you'd like to.
Yeah, so going back a few weeks ago, we met, had some conversation on it. Angie,
White and Blue?
Yeah, White and Blue met with us. Absolutely shared what their budget looked like it was going to allow to be able to contribute to the work in that effort. Unfortunately, the estimates that we're getting in regards to materials are significantly higher than the money that they appear to have to be able to come to the table with. And so that's where some of the rub is. What I can tell you is our team is eager to find ways to be able to make sure that we can be those good partners that they need us to be, while at the same time making sure that we're covering the costs that we have. We're not talking about just simply the work costs, but more than anything from our side of it, the material costs. But I'll pause there for a second and let Kyle and his team talk about that here for a minute. Go ahead.
You want to talk about it, Jake?
All right. He doesn't want the camera on. But I'm gonna sit over here close
With whoever's talking, so he's already on camera. So we did have the meeting with Angie, and we kind of discussed it. And as John said, you know, I know Public Works is always for seeing your project successful, because in some boat, we want the community to be better. The biggest difficulty that I run into in my position at Public Works is that, and this was a similar stance to what we had when we were approached with the fairgrounds, is that my job is not to weigh the public influence of a project, but to run a utility. And so looking at the opportunities in which I can come forward without putting the burden of the ball field, or this, not putting the ball field, but the move of this main onto my ratepayers, it's looking at things like, you know, paying actual costs versus estimates, you know, getting the approval of council to go away from what my ordinance dictates how we operate, trying to find any overlaps in those things. But I know based on our original estimates, I think Jake had them renewed this last week. We're at $190,000 in just parts to get this main moved. It's a significant lift. So on top of that, I think we began the discussion with Angie and John Garlitz, who's the head of maintenance, facilities and maintenance. And we began that conversation, I want to say around November. Mm-hmm. And so we got the real go-ahead somewhere in the last 2 or 3 months that this was a real go, and we've been through our budgeting process. So I'm not saying it's an impossible lift if we find a way to move forward, but it was definitely one that we didn't figure into the, hey, we need to do this in the next 3 months. So those are our initial hurdles that we've got. But I'd always like to end on a good note. Again, we're willing partners. I mean, I think we shut up on the field house. We helped push that project forward from the standpoint of public utilities. And we'll do it again. We'll show off the best of our abilities, because we do want to see, you know, the partnership between our organizations grow and become better, and watch you guys find success in all your endeavors.
How much lead time do you need to get parts for such a project? And I will use it to take
not 100% sure on the lead time on 12-inch pipe. We just ordered 18, and I want to say that it took around 2 months.
It's better than a year like it was.
Yes,
previously.
no,
Yeah.
it is. It's slowly crawling to better.
So when is this project supposed to be?
As soon as the fairgrounds are complete, the company is gonna come over and start their work. And, you know, obviously, we can work a little bit around the timeline of the city to get this project undertaken. But of course, EOU just simply can't pay the entire cost of moving a water main line for all of the brand. We're one of your ratepayers as well, and we're more than happy, again, to collaborate on costs. But we won't be able to lift up the entire project. We simply just don't have the funds. And so, you know, like I said, we're happy to work on timelines, and we're happy to work on even locations of the lines that are most cost effective for the city. But I think, you know, we need those conversations to move, I think, sooner rather than later, and find ways that no one is kind of overburdened with the project.
Some of the
So
lights.
that's the water main, with moving the water main, is that moving it near a street, or is it moving it around the ballpark?
Yeah, it would be moving it from through the ballpark area over to the right of way along C and Kepler. So it's the proposed route that has been put out there is to bring it along the right of way of 6th down to C and then along C Avenue. So
And we're okay with it still remaining on parts of our property too, as well. We're not saying, hey, you have to move it. You know, we're part of this community too, but we just need it to not run through the property. And you don't want it there either. I mean, trust me, you don't want it there either.
How long has that been an issue? I mean, with water going through this year?
We have massive drainage issues out there. Whether or not your water pipe is causing it, I am not the right person to ask. John is an engineer. He would be able to know more of that. To the best of my knowledge, your water line is okay. I feel like some of your residents would have noticed because it is at such a critical juncture. I feel like you probably would have heard complaints. But we do have just massive drainage issues out there. And that's why we have to go deeper even than the water pipe, but I'm not aware of your pipe having existing issues at this point.
yeah, for the most part, I mean, you can get small trickle leaks.
Yes.
I can tell you, John doesn't allow me to have small trickle leaks on EOU. Making sure
Yeah.
calling.
How long has that main line been there? It's been there for a long time before it was built, the
Since
baseball.
12th Street was constructed.
Yeah.
Which was in the
Well,
80s.
before
40
that.
plus years. It was before we even had that property,
Yeah,
before we even
that's-
bought that.
That used to be a street, there used to be houses back in there.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Can you give us a number of parts company? I assume you have an estimate that would be encompassing for that,
For, with the equipment and material.
and you've got labor, you've got everything else in there too.
Yep.
So what are we looking at?
Bottom dollar number was around 270, 265, 270.
That's parts labor, but you know how much of that university can much of?
When we met with Angie, she said that the absolute worst case scenario ceiling for them would be 175.
Yes, it's extremely generous.
So basically, we're talking about 100,000.
That's on the estimates though.
Yeah.
So that's where, that was where some of our conversation was difficult too, is because we're trying hard to make sure we're giving good estimates, but it's very possible that it could end up costing more. The desire is to do the best we can to make it cheaper, but there's some things we just can't control.
Timeline's not gonna be.
When we spoke about it, we all felt like we could meet the timelines, no problem. You guys had a goal to have it completely done by November, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking for grants or other things, you can't operate on that time. So,
Yeah, and we hadn't found, I mean, we do a pretty good job, I would say, scouring for grants for work. And this, I think athletic complexes are not great for grant investments, generally speaking. I don't know if you want to
No,
speak to that, Tim.
Yeah, a lot of
we-
it is revenue generating, and so, you know, your grantors are like pretty low on the fund. We might get a little bit of money, but expect the bulk of it to be picked up other ways.
but rerouting the main, is that gonna
roofs, all the pressure zones, everything will be fine. There'll be a few more fittings, but overall it's not gonna affect any operation of the system itself.
For the most part, it's a transmission main. The only services that come off that are EOUs.
Well, can we use any of the products that we already have? I mean, that are there now, can you reuse them? You can't do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Why did
So you're replacing new pipes with old pipes?
Yeah, they're old.
They're old, but I know, but what here, you need to replace with new, you're hooking up the new to the old, is
Yeah,
that?
that's fine. No problem there.
Okay.
Yeah, they have equipment that we hook up to the old and the new. It's just you don't wanna pull an old pipe out of the ground and reuse it.
No, I'm not saying to reuse it, I'm just saying,
No,
will
I
there
guess.
open up more issues?
I mean, they can always potentially open them up, but not likely. I mean, it's a regular, do that almost every project. We're doing it on Second Street next week.
So
Replacing,
how long will this take?
What do we have, 2,000 feet? I think we estimated
Oh, cool.
1,200.
Maybe that's Second Street. Maybe it is 2000.
They're all done together. Yeah. What did we say? 4 to 6 weeks?
4 weeks, probably.
Is that gonna pull people off of Palmer?
Well, we are dedicated to Second Street, so we're tied up until we get off Second Street, which I would estimate would be early August, early mid-August, when our crews would.
All hands on deck.
Which is when materials start showing up anyway, right?
Yeah.
So I have a question, so basically, if you do move the water line, basically it just affects EOU, no residents whatsoever during that time for their water and all that stuff. Is that what you're saying, or?
There would be a short.
It would be very minimal. I mean, a day, some residents may be out of water to do certain tie-ins, but as far as the overall construction, no.
I think the idea is that the water isn't turned off from this site until the new one is put in, and so there isn't that disruption. And so
But it's still probably a day is what you're talking about.
To do the tie-ins, yeah. The new to
Yeah,
do.
so 11 days would be out of water.
And even then, it would be very limited, just because of the location of the transmission.
So I guess what we're trying to eventually have to discuss if it's, we can fit this in our budget or not, even though we did a lot of cuts and stuff, right?
This is all enterprise funds. We do have a healthy enterprise fund. The question is are we okay with, utilizing funds that a greater population, arguably a greater population, put money towards, in order to subsidize the cost?
So what, do we have any idea how much that would leave us in that fund after?
You guys have to speak to that.
I mean, we're in the middle of drilling a new well, so that project could go higher, it could go lower, hasn't been bid yet. I mean, it's still in design, so that's one of those where, just as with this project, those projects, they can sometimes take a bad turn.
The well comes off the reserve fund. And we have set aside for that,
Yep.
which that would come from, I mean, for this project, that was the same place to come from. But correct.
Possibly. I mean, we haven't really analyzed the budget of where we would try and make it fit. And I don't like to say anything without Helen in the room, because then if she watches this, I can get in trouble, so.
Yep.
Yeah. So my official answer is, we would consult with our finance department to determine the best place to remove that money, and one of the.
Reserve fund is set up though for situations like this, we were returning large projects or water to ensure that we are prepared for the future.
Yeah, I mean, we have some in our operating budgets that cover this kind of thing. I mean, a lot when we're talking about budgeting and how enterprise funds work, is we are always budgeting for the worst case scenario. So if our 18-inch water main happens to blow in the middle of Second Street, we have to be able to prepare to act. So there are areas where we keep that money. It's not real comforting that you tap into those in August of your budget year, period 3, and you've got another 9 months, and you're taking that flexibility of operations out of what you have to work with. So that's not horribly comforting. So if there's other places that we can find where we can absorb the costs.
So we need to talk to Heather and figure out how much we can that would
Yeah, I think we're optimistic that we more a matter of not feeling comfortable with the idea of doing it than it is whether or not we can figure out how to do it. Bottom line, we can figure out how to do it. But you're right, yeah, we need to come back and articulate what that path would look like exactly.
I think that's a good idea, is coming back with how and where it's coming from in order to.
And we can put that up for decision for the council at the next council meeting. With the
Would this
explanation.
require supplemental budget, or is this within the reserve funds budget that we just?
I'm confident we could do it within, reserve fund.
Dr. Brian, could you speak a little bit to the second bullet point on this page, which seems to address how this might benefit the community overall? Because I think, to your point, John, this is a very narrow use of funds. And that's, as much as we like to consider that, we do have to realize that these are taxpayer dollars that are drawn from a much broader base. And so, the responsibility this council has is to make sure that we're spending the money in a way that addresses the needs of all constituents here again.
Yeah, I'd be happy to address that. And I would also, again, remind you that we've put up a substantial number of dollars to get this project moving for something that doesn't only affect EOU, and we are one of your largest ratepayers as well. So I would ask you to consider that among other issues. Yeah, so I mean, EOU has provided space for this community for many things, from Senator Merkley's recent visit to any number of opportunities for local youth and adults. And among those opportunities are our tremendous athletic facilities. As you are probably aware, throughout the summer, many of our hotels and Airbnbs are booked by local folk who come, or non-local folk who come and drop off their kids all throughout Eastern Oregon for camps that we host throughout the summer. Local kids also get the opportunity to take part in those events. Just this year, we hosted, as a partner to LeGrand, the volleyball championships. And so now we would be able to support LeGrand High School and others in baseball as well, to expand the ability of the fields that we currently have even onto our facilities. And so it is a great opportunity. We have never hoarded our facilities. We've always been extraordinarily generous in hosting any number of events and organizations, but truly our athletic camps are highly desired and almost always sold out. And so this really increases those opportunities for any number of softball, baseball related events. And again, it also preserves our ability to bring other individuals to this community to support them through things like hosting our own baseball games more frequently, rather than being on the road.
I'm just wondering if there's been any discussion at all about methods of, possibly, you raise ticket prices to the softball games $2-3 over an amount of time, you're getting a return on that investment. Just curious if that's been a part of the discussion.
We've talked about fundraising for athletics. Certainly, a recent conversation I had with several community members suggested that. But I think, as you can tell from that overhead view of the fields, these are not closed-in spaces where it's easy to kind of funnel people through entrances and exits. And I will share, I'm a little averse, and obviously I would work with Director Weisenfluh on this, but we're both a little averse to charging for those particular events. Right now, softball and hopefully baseball does get some good crowds, but not like they would with our own field. But people bring their lawn chairs, and they go to the local stores and they bring takeout, and it is like a cool family free activity. Sometimes they park their pickup trucks along the side of the road and they watch from the bed, and people bring up their dogs and just chill out for like 45 minutes and leave. And I like that about EOU. I like that we create spaces for our rural community to come together and enjoy athleticism and community. And things, I mean, this is not like a state-of-the-art park, to be clear. I mean, this is pretty basic infrastructure, but I like what we're offering there. And I also, I come to you as a collaborator, and I come to you as someone who's bringing a lot to the table. And this is city infrastructure at the end of the day, and we're willing to pay for part of it, a substantial part of it, but I do think the city owns some part of this cost, and I'm hopeful that we can find a resolution together that represents the value that EOU brings to this community. Yeah, I guess that would be my hope.
In our previous conversation on this too, when we were discussing the different work that they're doing up on the field, they're not building it as a state-of-the-art field that has all the bells and whistles. They're making it nice, but they're making it bare minimum nice, because their budget is so tight. And so
There's not even a plan for a scoreboard right now.
yeah.
We're putting what we can into this project, and Tim is supposed to finalize the rest.
Yeah, so we don't pay for it, yeah, really, there's no stand, we need to come up with a press box, and, also is, the setup, we're waiting and pushing those things out to try to come up with additional dollars from those, from donors and others along that, to fund those projects, we're not putting that burden on the students or, anybody, in the community other than donors and contributors. We're already lining up to help make this happen, but the fields are, pretty important. It'll drive not only enrollments, but the activities that President Ryan talks about. You go into campus during the summer, you see it's pretty much alive with students. There's all kinds of camps up there. So they're looking at how we can drive more students into these camps, because we have some fields up there that are really pulling in youth from around the area that are then looking to go east or other places.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as the week after graduation, we'll start seeing the evening football games.
Excuse me?
Grass.
Turf.
Turf. Yeah.
The
already they can-
outfield will be best.
Yeah, they can handle the rains that come through, and be able to drain. And then also like the football field, when we added that, when we made that synthetic turf, that increased the usage probably, 10, 15 fold. And we have teams that are now coming, the small football teams, the 8-man football teams, they're coming over and having rounds of playoff games in this region, which bringing all those folks into town. That's because we had a synthetic turf field and that people could play on it over and over again rather than the old grass field, which gets beat up and then it was like, now we have to repair it, let it go back in. So this will be, the infield will be all synthetic. And once you put those down, then that's kind of like, you don't want to cut them those, you pull them back up. That's why we don't put down our tents at the stadium for graduation because we can't punch holes in the turf.
It's unfortunate when it's raining.
It's unfortunate
Or
when it's
hailing.
raining, or
That's the
hailing,
case
or the
for us.
wind, yeah.
I heard you spoke really fast when you saw that storm coming in.
You could just, that's one of the beauty, right? You can sit out there and see all the wind coming in and the storm. Okay, let's go.
So, from the conversation that we've had this evening, unless there's more that wants to be had, what I'm gleaning and understanding from this is that we will put together the route, the path and costs associated with that, on the assumption that 175 is what you're bringing to the table, and then give you the ability to make a decision on that at the council, one way or the other, our next one, I believe, is it the second or the fifth?
July,
No, the first. Oh, yeah.
July 1st.
Yeah, July 1st.
I really appreciate this, and, this I think is very useful for us to keep in mind as we look at the opportunities that we have in partnership with partnering with the university. I've been on the council 5 years, and I think every single year we've talked about how LeGrand doesn't yet feel like a university town, not the way that other university towns do. And how do we make it feel that way? How do we integrate it so that everybody in the Grand knows when there's a football game, a softball game, whatever going on in EOU, so that everybody, what Grand is synonymous with EOU? How do we do that? I don't know the answer to it, but I think these are hopefully small steps forward toward that sort of a change in the paradigm probably don't fully appreciate the benefits that come to all of our residents by having your organization here.
Yeah, and you know, I believe, David, hearing you, it reminds me, when I was here last, I think we promised to create kind of like a bookmark or, you know, like a small, of the main events that happen, and we still need to fulfill that part of the contract, you know, giving you things like, you know, our volleyball games are packed with this community. I don't know how many of you have been out to see them, the basketball games as well, particularly, you know, in the winter when it gets cold, it's a good wholesome activity to do, and, you know, we need to get you all a card, because I think there's little things we can do like that to enhance the relationship and make sure that it's known, and maybe put those roundabout town. We had mentioned dropping them off at the hotels at one point too, but who knows, you know, I think people who are staying in hotels are probably good for us anyway.
Yeah,
So-
Yeah.
John, can we do anything with the app that we now have for the city? Or, you know, with what the city uses for events and things, is there a way of looping in some of the university things to that? I mean, I've taken my kids before to chemistry show nights, I've taken them to multicultural nights, and they're tremendously enriching experiences for my kids, for our family. We've taken them to theater events there, but I found that it's difficult sometimes to know when those things are going on. I'm not sure how we get that a little more available, a little more accessible for our average resident.
But I can say we absolutely could leverage the app. We're working through right now, that is one of the things that got cut in the budget. And so technically that runs out in December, but I feel like we're starting to identify and realize some savings in areas that we didn't before see, so I'm intending to try and keep that alive, because I think over time it's gonna end up being highly valuable to us.
Union
So-
County Chamber is trying to do the same thing,
Yeah.
trying to tie it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, one way or another, I feel like we can make that at least some level of additional value.
And it's good timing for that too. I think what I'm hearing from the Prosperity Council is that they are really taking a look at tourism and how towns are building out place, and, you know, having the kind of calendar usage. Just I will admit, I was looking at, like, trying to be like, is there a band playing this weekend? You know, like, you know, and then I found, you know, the and whatnot. But you know, I do think things like that matter, and now is a moment when EOU is looking, or not EOU, Oregon is looking at those types of things. I did have one other item,
Please.
if that's all right.
Absolutely.
All right. So you have the third sheet of paper. And thank you again to my colleagues for creating such a beautiful set of worksheets for y'all to look at. The last one's about our workforce readiness and our public assets. And I wanted to let you know that, you know, EOU is really trying to maintain our basic infrastructure, which is the buildings in which we teach our students. And so recently we put forward 3 projects to the Higher Education Coordinating Commission for bonding. And one of them, which we have listed here on the back page, which is the Loso Hall Student Access and Resiliency Project, was ranked number 3 in the state. While it remains unseen at this point whether or not number 3 is a winner, because there are only so many state dollars that the state is willing to invest in university infrastructure, community college infrastructure. There's a finite amount. It is Tim and my job in the coming months, no doubt, and in the new year, to advocate that this project, among others, really move to the forefront of the list. Tim and I believe that we have a good argument. The first 2 projects that are ranked are from the University of Oregon and Oregon State University. And while we have no arguments with our peers, we do think it's a little more difficult to put forward an attractive project proposal with the kinds of staffing levels and budget that exist at EOU versus massive universities. And so, as an argument for equity, and I think in our case, having been looked over several years in a row, we're going to really push for this project to get funded. And while it remains unseen whether or not this will be funded, we are going to work hard to bring those dollars to the community. When we, as I kind of mentioned earlier, when we get a project in this community, that means local contractors, that means local suppliers, lot of money into this community, and so we're continuing to invest in our buildings, and by such also investing in our communities. Those dollars are going to flow right through here, and we're also in discussion about perhaps putting forward emergency funding for Batchley Hall, because there are pretty big HVAC and electrical issues in that building. So we're continuing to invest in the university to make sure that the buildings are viable. And again, those investments are adding a lot of value to this community, let alone just having a nice infrastructure for your local college, which brings in people and jobs. I think this is critical, I think, to what we bring to the community. So I wanted to let you know that these could be coming down the pipeline. This would be a 2029 project, but like a 2027 funding.
Correct.
I get
Yeah, the
confused
funding
about
would be
this.
released in, the state works, it's about 2 years, so we get the approval of the funding in 27, and then they'll do it with their bond sales, which is usually then like spring of 29. A lot of times you can start working and charge against those bonds, but that's about the same. We'd be looking at moving on it. So yeah, it's $130-some million on proposals. And they're still on our project list, but we thought it would be important to make sure to keep you all appraised of what's going on, so there's no surprises. Oh, you guys are building a new building, or we're not building a new building. We're renovating a major building on campus that's going to have a lot of impact.
And our residence halls this summer are also undergoing construction, which again is bringing work to community as well as supply chain. So again, just always investing, always trying to keep not state of the art, but certainly up to date, safe, pleasing facilities to attract students and to keep them here and to make sure that we're offering a really great educational benefit. And there's a lot to celebrate about EOU right now, but we're certainly on the hustle right now to try and do our best to make sure we remain, vital to the community and an excellent resource for y'all.
And we've had discussions in the past how the grant economically doesn't exist without Eastern.
Yeah, the study showed us, right, just the economic viability. And,
Even without that study, you could kind of.
Yeah.
You could,
I would hope so.
It's
Yeah.
significant.
So,
It all mixes, I always think it all works together. We have a good hospital, and then they bring in folks, and they say, oh, I want to see the university and educational system, and then they see it, and say, oh, this is pretty good. This is nice. I didn't see this a lot of times. So we hear that from our own, we're recruiting faculty and staff, and in the hospital, recruits staff up there too. They do the same thing.
we hired a therapist a few years back who did his research on the area,
Mm-hmm.
and he wanted a smallish town. He was athletic and liked to rock climb, and found there were lots of places, and noticed that you had a rock climbing wall, and that was one of his selling points.
Yeah.
I mean, here.
Sure.
It's like, okay,
Yeah, people do the research.
great, yeah.
And we'll get that larger study to you too, once
Yeah.
it's almost gonna be out and publishable soon, and so I think y'all will find it interesting, and we'll make sure to get that to you.
Sorry. We're planning ahead, or planning for the first. All right, I don't have anything that I would like to contribute further to this particular dialogue, other than I think that Tim's and my intent is to try and do something like this quarterly, or at least twice a year.
Yeah, exactly, twice a year, right?
Twice a year where we get together, and then some of them wouldn't necessarily be as narrow in topic, but some of them to continue to explore ways that we can work well together.
Yeah.
We really need to keep in contact, connections.
Well, that was one thing we talked about. The more we're in contact, the more, and it doesn't, they could be conversations that, and we can include the president, include, our deans or other people who might talk about what's happening with programs on campus, it's just to keep you all in the loop of what's happening. And we're also in the loop of what's happening in the city too.
And they give us, if you guys weren't tracking, they give us a pretty beautiful venue to use for our quarterly town halls too. So it takes us from being okay to being outstanding, I would have to argue. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Okay, unless you have any questions from the council.
I think you're gonna bring it back to us, so.
Yes, we'll bring it back to you and we'll give you the path, the risks and concerns from the staff as well as, a recommendation